guys who consider themselves to be alpha male, who've never talked about the issues they had growing up, never talked about the beatings, the feelings of abandonment, watching the drug abuse in their neighborhoods, and molested. If you ever need a wake-up call on whether or not you a gangster or whether you about that street life, get shot. You know, I almost died on the operating table getting a simple foot surgery, right? I got to get back out there or I might not have a job. Can't make the club in the tub. You know, we talk about injuries, especially in football. We don't talk about it in the realm of trauma. Go with your gut. Go with your body and your spirit, right? Your body and your spirit is going to let you know a lot of things that some of these experts don't know.
Welcome to the Kaptainplantit Podcast. My name is Lance Kirsch, aka Captain Planet. I'm a former professional athlete. I once suffered from sickle cell trait, but I used 7 natural doctors to help me alleviate that suffrage. We're going to also talk about the 7 natural doctors on this podcast so that you can use those 7 natural doctors to help you with your health issues as well. On this episode, we'll talk about stress management. And the guest that I have with me today, I'll let you know a little bit about him. He's a former South Carolina Gamecock, former Indiana Colts, Pittsburgh Steeler. He knows Kung Fu. He's an entrepreneur, a speaker, and a dad. Wes Saunders. How you
Brother
doing
Lance, thank you, man. It's high time, and I appreciate you having me, brother.
Thank you for coming, man. Listen, man, you're dapper, man. You're looking good. I'm trying to look like you one day.
Hey,
man.
look, I just wanted to show up in the appropriate attire. You know, if we're going to do a high-class, high-level segment, you know, I need to dress the part.
No, you always killing it, man. I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, man. Wes and I, man, we go way back, man. You know, we're at the Coconut Grove Saturday Market.
Valley of the Giants.
The Valley of the Giants is what we call it. So when you see us, it's the Valley of the Giants.
Come on, man. You got to be 6'6" or taller to ride this ride right here. You know what I mean?
Listen, man, when you see us, it's pure fun, knowledge speaking, knowledge spitting. You know, we just want to make people happy and healthy. And, you know, once again, it's about the mental health that we're focusing on today, the stress management portion. Just want to get into it. Give us a quick introduction about yourself. You know, Wes, who are you? Where are you from? What was your early childhood?
All right. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, like you said, Wes Saunders, man. I'm originally from Gary, Indiana. Grew up in Durham, North Carolina, you know, Tobacco Road, where a lot of my childhood was shaped by sports, but obviously academics as well. My father is high academia, journalist for the Raleigh News and Observer. My mother was an accountant, worked with numbers. So, you know, I always found balance in my life. I did gymnastics early as a kid. I know you can relate to being the big kid growing up, man. You know, it wasn't always fun being the oddball out, but, you know, I had to find ways to learn to love myself because kids are cruel, you know that for a fact. So, you know, growing up in North Carolina was great, man, like you said, and made my way somehow by the grace of God to the National Football League, but of course it wasn't without its turbulence along the way, trials and tribulations. But I'm very well versed in the space of stress management and self-sabotage and depression and anxiety and overeating and all the things, you know what I'm saying? So that's where we at right now. I own a wellness company, Win with Wes, and a juice company, Wes Joose, based on gut health and healing the body from the inside out. So, you know, now it's all about that, man, and really reaching out to people and being relatable, because I think we've all had a tough time, especially these past 4 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. So where can they find you online?
They can find me on Instagram, Wes_Saunders88. Same handle on Twitter. You can find me Weslye Saunders on TikTok as well. TikTok is booming right now. You know, the kids are engaging with old Uncle Wes. So that's a great platform as well. And Weslye Saunders on YouTube, WESLYE Saunders. I bet you won't ever find anybody who spelled their first name like me.
Okay. So Wes, let's go back. You know, you were speaking about your childhood, right? Yes, you were speaking about being the odd person out. How did that make you feel? What was that? Tell me that experience.
Well, you know, it's a lot easier to talk about now than it was then, right? I'm 35 now, but, you know, issues like mental health and things of that nature were not very prevalent growing up, especially when you grow up in the Confederate South, right? It's usually you better deal with it and move on, especially if you're a man, a black man at that. Okay. So, you know, I really had to learn how to deal with trying to fit in. you know, that was pretty much a lot of part of my childhood, was trying to blend in with the other kids because I stuck out like a sore thumb, right? By the age of 8, 9 years old, I'm already the same size as a lot of my teachers. Wow. And so one place I did find refuge was, of course, on the football field, on the basketball court, on the soccer field, and in gymnastics, where I thrived, right? I love being a great athlete, and people are really, especially in the South, boy, they appreciate you. If you can play some football, they will make excuses for anything that you do. So I found out I could get away with a lot by being good at sports. So, you know, it had its balances.
Yeah. So talking about getting away with things, how did that affect you?
Well, you know, it shaped my perception, especially in this Western culture, man, where they place a high level. If you can play sports at a high level, you are that guy. It doesn't matter how well you speak. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter if you smell good. If you can play sports well, people treat you differently. And, you know, it didn't take me long to figure that out. And especially as kids, if you figure out, if you do something well, you get a reward for it. Well, I'm going to keep doing that thing, right? And there's no real true consequences to me being a knucklehead, right? You know, doing what kids do. Yeah. And so it's different strokes for different folks. So I would say that I had that privilege. Not a lot of people get that privilege of being a high-level athlete. And I will say I took advantage of that every turn I could.
This podcast is sponsored by Kaptainplantit.com. At Kaptainplantit.com, we have herbal supplements designed to address the most common health issues. Our flagship product is a superfood protein, where it not only has protein, but it has high organic minerals from sources like sea moss, chaga, cordyceps, and lion's mane to actually make you healthy. Go over to Kaptainplantit.com, type in summer 24 to get 20% off. Back to the show. Absolutely. So Wes, I know that, you know, me and you, we spoken, we're friends, right?
Yes,
we spoken. And you mentioned to me one time about, you know, something happened to you when you were young and when you got shot, right? Did that happen to you as like teenager or young? Like
13 years old, man. 13 years old, yeah. Back in Gary, Indiana, running around, chasing after my cousins, you know, trying to be the big kid on the block. At 13, I was already about 6'2", so I liked to fight. And, you know, I was pretty good at that. And so that was around the time in the early 2000s where guns came out of nowhere. Yeah. And there was a .22 caliber. I was in Michigan City, Indiana. Shout out MC, the 219. But, you know, if my dad is watching this, he's found out now because I haven't actually told him. So we might, hey, depending on how this goes, I might have to edit this out. Yeah, so yeah, that's funny. You asked me too. Hey, you said, is there anything you don't want to talk about? Yeah. And that was one thing I wasn't thinking about. So I appreciate you bringing that up, man. Yeah. But yeah, it was one of those issues where, you know, wrong place, wrong time. Didn't strike any vital organs. You know, we were able to get past that, and about less than a month later, I moved down to North Carolina for good with my pops. So yeah.
How did that affect you? Like, because that's rare to hear people. I've been around gun violence myself, right? I've seen a bunch of people get shot, brains in the ground. I've seen all that, but I've never been shot. Yeah. How did you overcome that mentally?
It burns. There's nothing glamorous about it, you know, especially in the culture that we live in, man, where, you know, everything like that is promoted. I was around, you know, 50 Cent is out. Like a lot of the, you earn your stripes in the hood if you either been to prison or you've been shot or you've been jumped in a gang or something like that. And so that was the first thing I noticed, was that it was all a lie. Like, it hurts. There's nobody around. There's nothing glamorous about it. You panic. There's a panic mode that happens, right? Because you don't know how serious it is. You don't know if it's a scrape or if it's a graze or if I'm about to die. So it's a lot of panic. And I see that a lot of thing I notice the most is that the most thuggish, gangsterous guys around are usually the most scared when it's really time. When the guns are really blazing or things happen instantly, you see who's real and who's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's you know, that environment. You know, we do glorify some nonsense sometimes, and sometimes you get street cred for being a delinquent almost. It's like people respect you more. Did that happen to you?
Well, I didn't talk about it a lot, right? So it was something that was really tight-knit, especially within the family. Nothing I bragged about at all. You know, I wasn't proud of it by any means because I was out there trying to be somebody who I wasn't. If you ever need a wake-up call on whether or not you're a gangster or whether you about that street life, get shot. Right? If you go, and that's why I say, the guys who go back to doing what it was that they were doing before they ran into an altercation or something life-threatening happened to them, and you can go back to the same environment that you came from, that led to that, then you a real G in my, and you're stupid, but you a G. So, that was the main thing, man, just distancing myself from it and saying, hey, you know what? I'm really going to take this sports thing seriously. I'm really going to, put my all into this and do the right thing and try to be a regular kid, because at that point, I'm like, what am I doing out here in the streets? At 13 years old, trying to sell crack with my cousin and doing things that I saw were cool. Dipset was hot at the time, so all you knew was hanging on the block. I had my do-rag and, my fake little grill in and stuff. And I'll say, a lot of that came from the music. A lot of the influence came from the entertainment and the guys I was trying to follow after, because I thought, it's not just good enough to be a good athlete. You got to be a hood dude for the girls to respect you. So that was another thing. You see how much we get influenced by the ladies.
Let's try to stay away from that one.
Yeah. That's a whole nother show. That's a whole nother time.
Yeah. I'll probably start.
We love you, ladies. We love you.
I'll start another show talking about that. But on this one, man, we definitely want to focus on the men's development piece, right? Yeah. Because it says a lot to somebody who at 13 gets shot, then to turn your life around to becoming a professional athlete. Like, it's hard for people to make that transition. Most people, they go deeper. Yeah, well, you got to remember, I wasn't in, I don't want people to get the wrong idea. I wasn't in the streets, right? I was street adjacent, right? I was just close enough to be there where I could go and be on the street and get that nitty gritty feel, and then go back to my grandma's house, who had, my grandparents were very successful at the time. So I was able to see both sides of the track. Now, the point I want to make is that I was stupid enough to think that the streets is where you wanted to be, and that's where you got credibility, where everybody in the streets is trying to get to what we already had in the suburbs. There's something to be said about that, Coach, because we want to be accepted as men, right? Even as a young kid, right? Most men join gangs because they want to be accepted and they want to be respected by other men, their peers, or even their elders, right? Yep. And in certain communities, if you look a certain way, then you have to be a part of that group. If you look this way, you got to be a part of that group, right? That's just one way that the community molds us. But let's talk more about like school. Like, how were you as a student? Because you're a pretty smart guy, man. You're extremely knowledgeable, man, about a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, it takes one to know one, man. That's why we clicked, man, immediately. Especially because here in this country, man, you're a large black man. It's almost a surprise if you're well spoken or you know about books, or you know about something other than sports. Yeah. So that was very much instilled in me at an early age. My father, Wes Saunders, he didn't play that. His whole thing was he couldn't care less about sports or football. It was about what was in your brain. How can you process knowledge and information, and of course how you treat people. So that was a big thing for me, man. In school, I took a lot of offense actually to people thinking that I was a dumb jock. So I almost had to do well in school just to spite them.
Same here.
So it was almost like a FU, like, you think I'm stupid, so I'm gonna just do this anyway, right? And so that was kind of a big thing for me. Growing in Durham, North Carolina at the time was very much thriving in school, especially public school, and I was able to go to a very magnificent elementary school, Club Boulevard Humanities Magnet School, which really helped me excel in the academically gifted program, man. I had a teacher, Miss Clark, who really stepped in, because at the time I was still, like Tupac said, it was almost, you had to prove to your boys that you almost had to act stupid sometimes to blend in. Yeah. And so thankfully I had some teachers who pulled me out of that realm, like, hey, you're not one of them. All right, get it together. You're better than that, and this is what you can do. So early on, I'm so thankful that I had that balance of people to show me what I could really do, especially in the classroom. Yeah.
We don't always have those teachers that have that foresight for all their students, but it was almost like people say you got to play a fool to catch a fool. Hey. You played a fool to trick the fools, right? Basically,
that's it. That's it. But knowing what I know now, man, especially when we throw around that word influencer, I should have been the guy pulling those guys over with me, saying, "Hey, man, let's read a book. Let's talk. Let's start our own little book club, or let's talk about something a little more high level than just what's all around us or playing video games." You know what I'm saying? So that was probably the biggest thing growing up. Even though I was the biggest kid, I was always so ready to follow other people. Right? I was so ready to let somebody else take the lead, because I didn't feel worthy of being the leader, and so I had to grow into that role.
Yeah, man. I think our times, we're both 35, born in 1989. When we were growing up in school in the 90s, it was cool to be dumb, but now it's almost like it shifted, like a 180.
Finally.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Oh, it's wonderful, man, especially now that I've got two beautiful children in this world, Cameron and Sebastian. Sebastian's 10 years old, my daughter's 9. And I love it, man, especially because I feel that the world is kind of getting agitated by dumbness, right? Like there's been so much stupidity floating around now that I think there's going to be more of a precipice placed upon knowledge and information and truth, right? Because, AI, you could put some stuff online right now and we don't know if it's true. We don't know if it really happened. Some pictures that have been fabricated.
Voices that have been fabricated.
There you go. All of the
whole
above.
Songs that have been fabricated.
Whole songs and another voice, man. So the real deal Holyfield, that thing, we about to hold closer to that because it's becoming more uncommon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So speaking about kids, right? You mentioned you had 2 kids.
Yes, sir.
How did the father role, the fatherhood role play into developing your brain as who you are now as an adult?
Well, it played everything. A lot of my personality was shaped by my children, especially because of how it started. Right, I'm not shy about my story.
You want to talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I was 24 at the time, and I had 2 women pregnant at the same time while I was in the NFL. Right, and so you talk about panic mode. I was definitely in panic mode. My organization, who I played for at the time, the Indianapolis Colts, it's kind of a big deal, right? Yeah. You got it on Shade Room and TMZ and all of these public outlets about what's going on, and it was a very messy situation, right? Very messy, but also I couldn't run from it, right? So I had to face it head on. And so having 2 children born 2 months apart was a blessing, but also it showed me a lot about myself and a lot about how to deal with the divine feminine, right? I have to understand where women are coming from. I was very much in a selfish place in my life, and all of a sudden, it's no longer about you. It's about these other women and these new kids or children who are coming into the world. And so that was the biggest eye-opener for me and something that I needed. Right now at 35, I'm looking back on it, and I got these 2 wonderful children, probably the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. But at the time, I thought my whole world was crumbling, right? I was so embarrassed, right? Out of wedlock. I wasn't with either one of the moms seriously, so it was a big deal. But on the back end, I learned a lot from it because I didn't run from it.
Yeah. That you having to go through what you went through on not just on camera, like in the news and people being reported. Like a lot of people talk about their issues, but their issues are being handled in their living room or in the comforts of their home. Yeah. You were on national TV, ESPN.
Front and center, baby. Yeah. Hey, I like to, you know my favorite quote, man. Once you have ruined your reputation, you can live quite freely, all right? So this is something a lot of people never get to experience because, like, hey, you know how I go. Everybody, especially family issues, personal issues, get swept under the rug or maybe even never talked about. Yeah. The worst things that have ever happened in my life have happened publicly. Aside from my children, I was suspended by the NCAA for accepting benefits for my likeness, suspended twice in the NFL for performance-enhancing drugs, and things of that nature, dealing with addiction. So all of these things were broadcast publicly, and I couldn't run from it. And I also had to learn how to manage my temper, right? This internet is booming at the time. People can't wait to get online and call you everything but the kitchen sink and talk about your parents, talk about how stupid you are, right? And what do I want to do? I'm young. I want to respond to everybody. Yeah. And that showed me that, you're going to lose. You talk about stress management. I was stressing myself out just by reading everything people were saying and trying to respond and trying to prove that I was not a bad guy and all of this stuff. And like what Henry Ford would say, hey, never complain, never explain. My dad told me that, hey, man, don't go out there trying to explain yourself. You're going to kill yourself trying to get people to like you more or to believe your side of the story. Hey, never complain, never explain.
It's almost like when we try to make a case for us not being crazy when we're not crazy. You look crazy.
You look crazy. There you go. And it's crazy. And it's crazy how that works out too. The more you try to, if you go outside and yell to people, I'm not crazy, somebody probably might come and put you in a straitjacket.
It's almost like you just got to show them.
Yeah.
Right. You just got to let the time go on, and then over time they're like, okay, cool, and let them come to that conclusion.
Time heals all wounds, man. I tell people that all the time. But not only does the time, but you got to learn something from it, right? You can't. At some point, people are going to realize who you are, especially if you keep repeating the same behaviors over and over. So my big thing is one of my favorite quotes is that a smart man learns from his own mistakes, but a wise man learns from the mistakes of others, right? And so I was smart for a long time, learning from my own mistakes. But then I was like, okay, if I'm wise about this thing, I got to learn how to never do this again, and to hopefully maybe stop someone else from making the same mistakes.
Exactly. Yeah. You spoke a lot about what was going on in your life at this time. And one thing I really wanted to focus in on was the performance. They say it was performance enhancing drugs.
Yeah, that's what they call it.
Explain that, because for me as an athlete, I know a lot of people talk about performance enhancing drugs, and they're talking about testosterone and steroids and all that. What was it for you?
Well, it was a tricky situation for me. Mine was my first suspension was for Adderall.
What did that do? Did that give you a competitive advantage, or?
It actually, so I had broken my foot coming into the NFL in 2011 while training for the combine, and so I had surgery on that foot. I came to training camp still having a lot of pain, and they gave me a lot of Vicodin and Oxycontin. So I was on opioids for the first time. And while they did help ease the pain, they didn't help me on the field, right? I don't know if you're familiar with those drugs, but they make you very sluggish out of it, right? And so I wasn't playing at a high level. And I had a teammate of mine offer me one of his pills, the Adderall. I hadn't even heard of it. I knew my little brother was on it, but I didn't really know exactly what it
But Adderall's more for focus, not for pain, right?
There you go. So it helped me to focus in spite of the pain. And pretty much to counteract the opioids that I had been taking. And so it was a one-time thing, actually. I took it, and, I had a drug test that summer for a game, maybe a week after I had taken it, and I didn't learn about the failed test until months later. We're heading into the playoffs, and they tell me, hey, Wes failed a test from August, and he's facing a 4-game suspension. What do y'all want to do now? I'm always I'm accountable for my actions, but people don't remember there was a NFL lockout during that year.
Okay.
So during that time for 3-4 months, there was no NFL whatsoever. So I was at home in North Carolina. So during this whole time where they're supposed to be teaching rookies about what you can take, what you can't take, what's banned, what's not banned, there was none of that because we were at home. So all of a sudden we get thrown into the fire in July. They sign the agreement back, and I'm back playing. And within 15 days, I'm in Pittsburgh making the team, right? And so I didn't know about any banned substances, anything like that. So it caught me by surprise. Caught the Steelers organization by surprise as well, because we were going into the playoffs at the time, and they had to make a decision. Do we start Wes's suspension now and risk maybe losing him for a playoff stretch, because we had a pretty good team. We thought we were going to the Super Bowl, or do we wait and defer till next season, and I'll miss the first 4 games of the next year, which is what we decided to do. So ended up taking that 4-game on the head for the next year, and unfortunately we didn't make it too far in the playoffs because we lost to Tim Tebow in Denver that year on a crazy play, man. Rest in peace to Demarius Thomas, man. He made a great play at the end, but that just goes to show how life works out sometimes.
Yeah. So I just want to unpack that whole situation, because I don't know if people understand the pressure that you're under as an athlete once you get injured, right? When you get injured as an athlete, the position that you're fighting for isn't necessarily solidified, right? So you get injured, they place you on medication. These medications are for pain management, right?
Yes.
How much time did they give you to heal to get back on the field? And was it fully healed, or obviously you still had pain?
No, it wasn't healed at all, right? And so that was the whole thing. I came into camp with an unhealed foot in the first place. And so, we talk about injuries, especially in football. We don't talk about it in the realm of trauma enough.
There we go.
It's a traumatic experience that's happened on your body and on your mind, and now the trauma speeds up a little bit more because stresses are involved, because mentally I got to get back out there or I might not have a job. Can't make the club in the tub. And so that mental aspect of it is the hardest part, and we often don't talk about that. So it's not about how much time they give you. It's about more so how they treat you after you get hurt, right? It's that, hey, we know you're hurt, but we kind of give you that side eye, like, don't be hurt too long there now, boy. Hey, you know what's at stake here. And so that insinuation can make you a little uneasy. And so I went through that, and that's probably one of the reasons why I ended up breaking my foot again in the off season. Yeah. But that's neither here nor there. It's really survival of the fittest. Everybody in football is pretty much hurt. It's how much hurt can you deal with and play at a high level and still maintain.
Absolutely. I feel like a lot of people are critics. A lot of people are fanatics, and they're watching from the outside in. Like, oh, this person's stupid. Yeah. They're taking this, they're doing that, right. But they're not understanding the pressure you're under. They don't know that your contract may be up. It's almost like if you hypothetically get sick at outside of work one day when you have a normal 9-to-5 job. I wouldn't say normal, but just you have a 9-to-5 job, and there's so much competition for your position that if you're out for 3 to 4 days, somebody else is going to fill your role, right? That's the only time people will understand that. Yeah. And I wish they could understand that.
It's a lot of pressure. Well, first of all, even when you get signed, even if you're not hurt, they still looking for your replacement. I want people to know that. You could be perfectly fine, and they still looking for someone who might be cheaper, who might be faster, who might be whatever the case may be. So your job is not secure whatsoever. And of course, on top of that, most people don't want to read further into the headlines. They see PED, performance enhancing drugs, they think steroids. Mm-hmm. Most people are surprised when I tell them Adderall, right? And especially because they got their kids on it or something like that. So it's a big surprise. It was a surprise for me as well, but those were one of those moments that had to happen in order for me to start understanding what I'm putting in my body. Well, actually, I would say the second suspension is really what did it, but we'll get to it. Yeah, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Yeah, we just now getting that train rolling. Yeah, we got to
massage this thing real quick, right? We got to foreplay this thing, right? So as an athlete, you're going through this, and you're having these mental traumas, right? You're having to take this medication. It's almost like it's an example of why athletes probably get paid as much as they get paid, because the job security isn't secure. It's a high risk, high stakes job.
Absolutely.
And the injuries are high, and the brain trauma is high, and a lot of pressure. And how do you feel about people always comparing themselves to athletes or down talking athletes because he makes $20 million? What's wrong with him? He should just be happy for it. Like, what do you feel about that when people speak that way about athletes?
It took me a while to understand other people's point of view, because it used to piss me off a little bit. Yeah. But the Bible teaches us forgiveness and grace, so I have to meet people where they're at, right? Yeah. So if that's their only perception of athletes is, they almost look at us like robots, right? Like, hey, we see this finished product out there. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes. We don't really care, first of all, and
perform.
Perform. So they're paying their $80 for a ticket or however much. So they're expecting a product out there. It's almost as if they're going to Chili's and they Sizzler coming out or something like that. They're expecting that product to come for what they paid for. So it's unfortunate, but I was able to see on the front end exactly why some guys will sit out, right, and renegotiate that contract. I'm not playing until I get my money, because nothing's guaranteed. You see how these teams treat you like a commodity. Like the NFL is comprised of 32 master businessmen who own these teams, right? Football is a plaything for them, right? They're not making a majority of their money from us, right? So we don't. You understand how much we don't matter in the grand scheme of things, especially when you get hurt and injured.
And I heard somewhere that the NFL is a 501(c)(3).
It was, I think, up until like 2019. It was really? A not-for-profit. Yeah, I don't even know how that works out. But that's one of those things that makes you raise an eyebrow.
Listen, we played the sport. We're the ones that chose that path. And as men, we lay in our bed that we make, and we're not blaming the NFL or anyone. We knew the stakes that we had, and we took it. But let's go back to to the second injury.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that one. Not the second incident.
Yeah.
What happened with that one?
That was just me being stupid, man, partying, right? I was down here in Miami, I was just finished up my offseason with the Indianapolis Colts and was looking to have a good time. And one of the first places guys go in the offseason to have a good time is Miami, right? And so Miami and Vegas was the move. We were doing a lot of partying. And at the time, like I said before, we were influenced by the music. The street drug Molly was being passed around, right? Spoken about in songs, pop the Molly, I'm sweating. Like it was one of those things that had become almost a part of the culture. Yeah. And so me being young, I realized that people enjoyed that stuff at these gatherings and these functions. So I was able to get my hands on some, and that became part of our party ritual, so to speak. And unfortunately, these random drug tests that come from the NFL are coming all off season. And so after one crazy weekend partying in Miami, I think I had a test back in North Carolina. And 3 weeks later, I get a call again from Dr. John Lombardo, who you do not want to hear from. In the NFL, if you get an email or a letter from the NFL offices and it got John Lombardo name on it, you already know what time it is. And so I get this letter, and they told me that I had failed yet another drug test for on the banned substance list for the NFL. Could not for the life of me figure out what they were talking about, right? I'm getting ready to appeal it and all of this stuff. And they send the documents of the report, and it says D-methamphetamine, which I had to look up, which was MDMA Molly at the time, right? So this party drug that guys and people were using, out for their leisure, turned up on the NFL as a banned substance, and I got an 8-game suspension for that. So within 3 years, aside from the NCAA incident, I've got 2 suspensions in the NFL, 12 games, and almost $400,000 worth of fines.
Yeah. So the thing is that, we have to humanize this thing, right? Like,
very hard to do from the public's perspective. They don't.
You're going through all these struggles with playing, this stress, this pressure, and you're trying to find a way to feel good.
Oh yeah.
So mentally, you're trying to put yourself in that feel good state.
Yeah.
Even though, you own up to all your, I'm not making an excuse for you at all. I'm not in a position to make an excuse for somebody. But at the same time, we have to talk about the issue and diagnose the issue. If you're going through so much stress and so much pain, you're trying to make yourself feel good. They didn't offer you an alternative way of making yourself feel good. Like, What were you supposed to do?
No. And nobody cared that I was popping 2 or 3 Oxycontin a day, right? I had an opioid addiction that I was dealing with that nobody knew about. But opioids aren't on the NFL banned substance list. They give you those freely. So I had a whole cabinet of those, like I had Skittles. It was an enormous amount of opioids. You can hear Calvin Johnson talk about some of these things now. He speaks on it. So, they don't really care about that. So it's almost like every man for himself. However you need to feel good, you feel good, and just don't let us catch you. But unfortunately, I got caught up in the wash of that. And there's no excuses for it. I was out having a good time. But I also know now, of course, that they talk about the male brain isn't even fully developed until we're 25, right? So 22, 23, 24, I'm thinking I'm in my prime. I got all of this money that I've just come into, right? My mindset was nowhere near where it is now, right? I was very vulnerable, very much in a space where I was prone to highly suggestive activities, right? Especially coming around here. And if the ladies are asking for it, hey, I'm there. I'm doing whatever they ask for. So, it taught me a lot about boundaries, taught me a lot about myself. And, it was one of those things where, obviously I wish it wouldn't have happened, but it's that moment where, especially you getting suspended twice. Once is one thing, then twice, now people are really looking at you like you're stupid. People are it's a growing embarrassment for your family, ridicule. You don't know if you'll ever play again, right? I thought my career was over, so it was a lot of things that I was dealing with aside from the injuries and the drug abuse.
Did they offer you any alternative ways of making yourself feel healthy or feel happy?
Not at all. Not at all. No alternatives. I didn't know about any alternatives. And so when I learned about it was during my suspension, right? So during those 8 games, I had a long time to think about things. I went out to Arizona and started training at PEP, got on a weight program, man, and went down what we called the YouTube rabbit hole, right? I had a lot of time on my hands, and I found a guy named Dr. Sebi on YouTube and some of his teachings. And, of course, I started reading the Bible a lot more and what came up in the Bible was fasting a lot. I didn't hear, you go to church all these years and you never really hear them talk about fasting. And then I'm seeing this in this book, and I see Dr. Sabi referring to it, and I'm seeing about alkaline food. So during this time of suspension was probably my biggest time of growth as far as mentally, spiritually, and physically.
So outside of fasting, were there any other modalities that you used to help you mentally cope?
I dallied in the psilocybins early, just to kind of, obviously I was 420 friendly. Cannabis was very much a part of my life. Thank goodness, because I had been a guy who was a huge opponent of cannabis up until I got to the NFL, and I saw some of your favorite players using it. Right, I thought it was so taboo. I was scared. Before games, pain management. I'm not gonna name any names. Just please don't. I ain't gonna throw them under the bus, but just know some of your guys that you've seen on your favorite commercials, were
in movies,
in movies with cannabis users. So that actually released some of that stigma and allowed me to partake. I will say, I don't know if I would have made it in the NFL had it not been for cannabis, right? That was another thing where I was like, okay, I don't have to, this Oxycontin and Vicodin doesn't have to be a part of my everyday life. There's another way, and it actually can help me, right? I was able to watch film after I, smoke a J, take my iPad in my bedroom and watch film from yesterday's practice, and I come back the next day with a new mindset, and I'm doing it was opening my passageways of thinking that had never been opened before, and it was amazing to me.
Yeah. So around that time, it was still banned in the NFL, marijuana?
Yes, it was.
Right? And you never got caught for that?
Actually, I did. Yeah. So
I never heard about this one.
Right. No, I didn't get suspended though. So they got a whole other thing in the NFL for marijuana and things of that nature, what they call street drugs, quote unquote, and you get a warning the first time. But the warning comes with you getting put in what they call the program.
And what's that?
So the program is, let's say you fail a test for training camp in July. You fail that test, you won't face any suspension, but you'll be on probation pretty much for a year. And anytime, anywhere you are in the world, they can call you up and test you randomly for cannabis, and you got to pick up the phone and be on call anywhere. I mean, I've gotten tested everywhere. Like, I've gone on vacation in other countries, and I've still had to report to these guys. And so basically, for a year, you're on probation, and they test you randomly all through the year, and it's very prevalent and random. So that's the program. You got to survive the program. Then if you can survive in there for a year without getting caught, then you get placed out of the program. But if you do get caught, that's when the suspension and the fine comes in. So I think that's how my boy Josh Gordon got caught up in a lot of things, man. Josh is a great guy, great athlete, but that program it's almost unfair,
Yeah. But you can drink alcohol.
Of course, yeah.
You can take Vicodin.
Yes.
But you can't take herbal,
you can take Toradol. That's another thing. Toradol, I don't know if you know, the shot we used to get, you get before the game, that Toradol turns off pretty much all your pain sensors for about 6 to 8 hours.
Like the cortisol shot. Huh? The cortisol shot that you get.
No, it's cortisol, but it's also Toradol. Toradol is the NFL, I think they don't do the shot anymore. Maybe I think it's a pill, but before they was given a shot. And so you would have a whole team lined up for this doctor to give you a shot in your butt cheek. And for 6 to 8 hours, you can run through a wall and do whatever. And it's crazy. But then after, of course, the next day, it feels like you got run over by a dump truck. But in between the lines of the game, man, can't feel nothing. And that Toradol, we know now, has long-lasting effects on the liver, possibly on the brain, things of that nature. So, they were allowing stuff, and it was all about, whatever interest they serve.
Every synthetic medication or every synthetic thing that you consume has some type of drawback or effect to it.
Absolutely.
I tell you what, quick story. I have a ex-teammate, still a good friend. Larry Sanders played in the NBA, played for the Milwaukee Bucks, right?
Okay.
Was doing pretty good. Had some anxiety issues as well, right? Because when you come from certain environments and then you go into, some money,
absolutely,
people start treating you different. So now you have anxiety about people around you, right? I'll try to bring him on so he can talk more about it. But just to give you a gist, they tried to put him in a program and all that, and they tried to put him on medication. He didn't want to do it, but I think he went through the program to learn like the ways to think himself out of situations.
Right.
But then he started medicating himself with marijuana, and then they kicked him out of the NBA because he didn't want to come off marijuana because he didn't want to take their route. All right, but it's funny because here they'll give you a list, like here are the drugs you can take, but here are the drugs you can't take. But the ones you can take, it'll destroy you for the rest of your life. But the ones you can't take, it'll make you feel better.
Could possibly help you. Yep.
With little side effects.
It's crazy how that works out, man. And I could foresee the NFL decriminalizing MDMA soon. You know, the stigma behind MDMA is starting to loosen. People are starting to have these conversations. So potentially, you know, these could be used as modalities to help these guys because we're having more conversations like this, right? Calvin Johnson, some of the biggest players in the game are coming out talking about their issues and things they've dealt with, especially with these doctors. And, you know, I almost died on the operating table getting a simple foot surgery, right, from the anesthesia.
What do you mean you almost... From anesthesia?
Yeah, it went down, you know, it was supposed to be my second surgery on my foot, and I was up in Pittsburgh, and they gave me some anesthesia, and I just remember, you know, waking up with the tube in my mouth and, you know, having about 4 or 5 people having to pin me down, and I remember coming to maybe like the next day, but it was such a simple procedure. I didn't have, you know, any family in town, didn't have anybody there, but I ended up being in the hospital like 3 or 4 days, and it was super scary, and I was like, man, you know, I felt my body reject what they were trying to give me. And I think that's one of the biggest keys I've learned through this whole thing is, you know, you got these people around you, and I know everyone thinks they're the smartest thing since sliced bread, but go with your gut, go with your body and your spirit, right? Your body and your spirit is going to let you know a lot of things that some of these experts don't know, right? The doctors don't know everything, right? I think a lot of people have, you know, been able to see that these past few years because we've almost given them Christ-like status where we just believe everything that they say and we go with anything that they give us. But we see now that can have an alternate effect. So you got to know your body, right? Like Hippocrates said, if you are not your own doctor, you are a fool.
You a fool.
Yeah.
That's
the real Hippocratic oath.
That's the real Hippocratic oath, right? You know, man, it's, you know, as men in men's mental health, how far do you think that has come as far as the NFL or just in general, people taking our health as men serious, like our mental side of health serious?
I think we've crossed a lot of barriers these last 10 years, I would say. I mean, probably more often maybe the last 5 years. I'm going to condense it even more. I think we're in a space now where people are starting to open up. It's not deemed as being soft to talk about your feelings and talk about things that have hurt you and affected you. One of the reasons why I started my company, Win with Wes, because I felt like my story was relatable to a lot of people, even if they weren't in sports. A lot of men who, you know, I hate using the term alpha male, but, you know, just for the sake of conversation, guys who consider themselves to be alpha male, who've never talked about the issues they had growing up, never talked about the beatings they got or the feelings of abandonment or watching the drug abuse in their neighborhoods, or I hate to say it, even sometimes being molested, right? Some of these issues that guys will never talk about. Now I've be talking about my issues has opened up a channel to maybe speak on some of these issues because, you know, like they say, the body keeps the score. So a lot of people are still carrying things that they thought they left behind a long time ago, but they have not, right? It shows up in their workplace. It shows up in their relationships. It shows up everywhere. So
in your children, you pass it down.
In your children, right? Yeah, I had to, you know, do some things in my life that, my father had dealt with, right, that we never talked about. But, you know, when I dealt with it, now all of a sudden it comes up. And I'm like, hey, you know, we could have talked about this and avoided some of these issues. So I'm glad to see which way the conversation's going now. And kudos to brothers like you, man, for opening up platforms like this to even come and talk about this stuff, man. You know, especially, hey, ain't nothing wrong with some intelligent, handsome brothers coming on talking about things that they've dealt with and trauma and vulnerability, man. That's what people need to see, right?
Absolutely.
And so now I think this is opening up a whole new space, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, man. I think it's, you know, we're in a time where people have come to grips with the fact why men actually go through with suicide 4 times more than women. Right, not to compare women and men, but, you know, there's a reason why, and I think the majority of that reason is the fact that we're just quiet and we're just suffering quietly, and we just take ourselves out in silence because we don't want to hurt anyone. Right?
We'll deal with it ourselves. We'll jump on the landmine, man. And shout out, I'll be remiss if I didn't mention my former teammate from South Carolina, Kenny McKinley. a good friend, former NFL athlete who committed suicide as well back in 2010. And he actually committed suicide at the time where I had just gotten kicked off the team for NCAA violations for accepting money.
Okay.
So I'm going through a dark time in my life. I was 21 years old, just got kicked off the team, feeling very much sorry for myself, very much in a depressed state because I had to stay at school as well. So just imagine I was kicked off the team, but the team still goes on. They're still winning, and I'm at school on campus watching this thing go by me. And, I was very depressed. And then we get this news that Kenny had killed himself while he was with the Denver Broncos. And it shook my world up, but it also made me look at myself in the mirror like, hey, Wes, are you that depressed? Are you that level where you ready to end it all? So it brought things back into focus for me and made me stop feeling so sorry for myself, honestly.
Yeah, man, the shame you had to go through walking around campus. I'm pretty sure you stand out like a sore thumb walking around campus. And they're like, why aren't you playing? What are you doing?
I was the number one tight end in the country, man. And, I sat down and the show goes on, and South Carolina had the best season in school history that year, right? We went to the SEC championship. I don't know if you remember, that was the year Cam Newton went crazy.
Auburn?
We lost twice to Auburn. And I still think about to this day, like, man, I think I could have helped my team beat Auburn, and we could have maybe competed for a national championship. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. I still made it to the next level. But those are the things you think about, man. Especially now since these college kids are getting paid, right? The thing that I got suspended for is now completely legal. So that's another aspect of forgiveness that I had to show. I had to actually say out loud, hey, NCAA, I forgive you. South Carolina, I forgive you.
That's a perfect segue, right? So NIL, you get suspended when you were playing because you accepted money. But now, fast forward 2024, the school pays the player, not Nike or any of these other sponsors. The school pays the player. Like when you were playing, did you know when you were in college, did you know that this was wrong? Like, hey, I'm just working for a scholarship that's worth like $25,000, but I'm sacrificing my body. I should get paid more. When I go to the lunchroom, I'm hungry and I want to eat more, but I don't have enough swipes. Like, tell me about that back in college.
Yeah, there's that initial, obviously, come as an 18-year-old kid, you get to a D1 SEC school, you're just happy to be there. And then after a while, you start to earn your stripes and start to see the lay of the land. And then you start to understand how things work, right? I'm seeing how the money's flowing. We had a weekend stipend we call weekend money.
Y'all had weekend money?
Yeah, we had weekend money.
We didn't have that.
So we would get weekend money, $42 a weekend. It wasn't
$42.
$42. But that $42 can be deducted if you miss a class, if you miss a meal, if anything you miss during that week. They'll take 10 off, so you can end up getting $12 for the weekend, if you miss a class or a meal. So I was seeing how that was working. The coaches were getting new cars and new, I was seeing the money shift, and I'm like, man, this something don't feel right. I'm seeing all these people wearing my jerseys. I've had to go on 3 different autograph signings this week and still got practice. Still got practice.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where I'm like, well, okay, it was understood at the time that the better of a player you are, the more maybe, handshakes you get from boosters and people showing you a little more love. So that's kind of what you're working toward. And that's kind of what happened to me. I came back from my senior year. I was the number 1 tight end. Now I'm the pretty girl at the dance. And so all of these financial advisors and agents are trying to woo me. And I was enjoying it. I was actually on a trip in the Hamptons with a financial advisor when we got a call that the NCAA would be coming to Columbia to interview me that next Tuesday. So that's when we went into panic mode, like, this thing is real. And they were on a witch hunt after the Reggie Bush scandal. A lot of people told the NCAA that they weren't doing enough. They should be harder on players.
Harder.
And so me and a few of my colleagues, Marvin Austin, Greg Little from University of North Carolina, who were also suspended, we were all the top players at our position. So they were going for high-level players who maybe have been partaking.
To make an example out of it.
Made an example, and, they made it loud and clear.
Yeah. Life isn't about fairness or not. It's about knowing the rules and playing the rules as the rules are.
There you
right?
go.
Like I say, I don't take any blame from you for what you did, but at the same time, what those boosters were doing, they were ahead of the game.
Yeah.
They knew the stress you were under. They knew the fact that you're the best player and people are coming at you expecting you to look a certain way, dress a certain way, but you're having to wear old clothes that are probably, like whatever, right? Because having enough money in your pocket it gives you the freedom of mind to move around and to be healthier and happier. It's almost like if you get LeBron James and pay him nothing, but he has to show up at certain events and do certain things. Like, how can he really operate and be his best?
There you go. That's how people. And then, of course, you know, I didn't come from the slums. You know, I didn't come from a poor household. But my father is one of those guys. Shout out to Barry Saunders. Yeah. He's one of those old school pops who feels like, hey, boy, you at school. You what you need money for? They feeding you. They give you 3 meals a day. You know, you got your car. You don't need no money, right? You should be able to do with a little, and that's all well and good. But you know, telling that to a
you're a grown adult. 18 years old, you're an adult. You should get paid. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. Like,
we know that now. But at the time, that was not even on the table for discussion. You know what I'm saying? So it's beautiful to see how quickly things change in 15 years or 14. That was my senior year, 2010. So, you know, shout out to the kids now. A lot of my messages when I was going and speaking to the kids for several years was about following the rules and not taking money and then not accepting this. Now that whole message has totally changed.
You got to change your whole talk fast now.
I got to scrap that. I done threw that TED talk out. Now it's about getting the money, understanding financial literacy.
What to do with it.
Where to put it, how to save it. Having the right people around you. Yeah, so it's all changed, but that's the world, man. We got to pivot. Now we had virtual learning, all of these things in the world, AI. We got to learn how to pivot, and we got to learn how to manage our emotions, because a lot of people ask me when they hear my story in its totality. They ask me, how are you not so angry about this? How does this not, like, I would do this if, you know. And so
2020 vision.
There you go. Yeah. So I'm like, you know, hindsight's 2020. I'm like, man, you know, I put myself in these positions. Now, what did I learn from it? I'm still here. I'm still breathing. So now I can make a change. I can correct it, and I can help somebody else not go through it. So, you know, we got some things we can work with now.
Yeah. You know, it's one thing when, you know, it's a rule. It's one thing when it's a law, but you know when the law is immoral. Yeah. It's like, I'm still going to break it. I'm sorry. It's immoral. It is what it is. Like, you're going to have to punish. You got to ask
yourself, who's making these laws? I think
there you go.
In like 18 states, it's still legal for you to marry your horse. Like, you know, it's random laws that are in place that don't make any sense. Yeah. So, you know, you gotta take that with a grain of salt.
Dude, who would marry their horse though?
You'd be surprised, man. That's another. You talk about the Bible. There's another reason why so many people, why they mention bestiality. A man shouldn't lie with an animal, because you'd be surprised, man. Hey, some of these guys are on the farm and they don't have any neighbors for 12 to 15 miles. It's
they get lonely.
They get lonely. Like, these things happen. This is real life. I hate to. Hey, I don't know how far we're gonna take it with this podcast. You know, but these
we can go there.
These things really occur. Right, and so you understand why certain laws are put into place, but at the end of the day, I follow God's law. Yeah. You know.
So guys, we do not condone bestiality.
No,
this is not a podcast condoning it.
That's the whole point, is that we do not.
We don't do that. Right,
but the law does.
Yeah, but that's a law I will follow. Right, that is immoral for me. That's immoral.
That's immoral. But some people, they feel like they should have the right to marry a farm animal. Yeah. So, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, you know, one thing about life, right? What was once okay, or what was deemed as, you know, not okay, now it's okay when time goes on. And I feel like that's how the NIL is. That's how marijuana is. Plant medicines. Have you taken any plant medicines?
I have.
What have you done?
Oh man, I've done DMT, mushrooms, psilocybin. Let's see, what else? Ketamine. Yeah. I've tried quite a bit.
Ayahuasca?
You know, I haven't done ayahuasca. You know,
Iboga?
I haven't done Iboga, man. You got to let me know about that. But
honestly,
some of the issues I've dealt with, man. Honestly, I'm not against any of those, because I know they've helped a lot of people. But you know, some of the real life things that I've dealt with have felt like a trip on mushrooms, or like, you know, felt like I was in another universe, right? And so I had to bring myself back, had to find some kind of equilibrium, because at certain times it felt like the world wasn't real. Some of the stuff I was dealing with, man, you know, your body can process information just like it would taking a a drip of DMT or ketamine, right? And so I say that just to say that, you know, I kind of know how my mind works. I know how my body works now. So I kind of know what's for me and know what they gauge in. But I know for sure it's helped a lot of my former teammates. And I wish some guys would have actually partaken in it before.
Early.
You know, earlier.
Yeah.
You know, we've lost some good men too early, man. Shout out my boy Vontae Davis, man, Vincent Jackson. There's a lot of these guys, man, who Demarius Thomas, who left us too early. We don't know exactly why, but I do know maybe football didn't help it, right?
Yeah,
you know,
and the procedures of how they manage trauma and pain, right? Do you think that had they had access to the knowledge of the plant medicines and the modalities that we have, the methodologies we have now, you think that could have saved some of their lives?
Absolutely. I absolutely believe that, because I tell people all the time, my favorite drug of choice is oxygen, right? Breathwork has saved my life. I've been breathing wrong for 30 years, right? Who knew? And through breath, I found that that's the connection between the divine and the physical realm. And we can change. I always say peace is only a breath away. You can change your whole mindset. You can change your posture. You can change a lot of things with the proper breath. And so whatever it is that you're going through, man, like, you know, I believe that it can be overcome through a steady, intentional breath method and what you're putting in your body.
Absolutely. You know, air and breath work is one of my 7 natural doctors. Yeah. And you know, I partake in that as well. I do some humming. I love it. Some ohms and stuff like that.
You gotta have it. You gotta have it, man. That's where it's at, man. It's especially when they talk about disease and illness, right? Disease can't live in an oxygenated state, right? If you oxygenate your body properly, right, you can get rid of illnesses, ailments, right? I hate when people say, "Oh yeah, well such and such runs in my family." No, it don't. It doesn't. It ends with you. Yeah. Right. You just got to believe that.
Bad habits running your family.
Bad habits running your family.
Not knowing how to cope.
Partaking in those. Yeah. So you can cut it off today. Yeah. So really, that's where the discipline comes into it, and denying yourself of some of your favorite things. You know, here in America, they tell you if you like something, get some of it and get some more of it. Get some more. All you can eat. Big gulp. Put as much as you can on your plate because you deserve it.
And when you start feeling bad, what do?
You go back to that same thing.
And then now you have to go to the hospital. What they give you?
And they give you some drugs, right? It's all a cycle, right? It's a cycle, man. Yeah. If you follow the money, you figure out what's going on. I ain't got to say too much. You know what time it is.
Oh, I already know. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's the maze. Yeah. Right, that we have to operate within, right?
Absolutely.
But we don't know that the maze is only so high, so we can actually jump outside of that game, right? Like we can climb out of the game and build our own maze, right?
Well, that's the key about indoctrination. Indoctrination makes you think that you're not able to get out of the maze, right? They think that you're going to figure out yourself and fit into this maze as well as you can, and the people who fit in the maze the best get promoted. Right? They're the CEO, the president, summa cum laude, valedictorian, whatever. And I'm not knocking any valedictorians or summa cum laudes out there. They're gonna hear this on the internet, but I'm just saying, you know, a lot of that stuff is rewarded for being how well can you fit inside the system. Right? I was always that guy trying to do things a little bit different, you know, and I kind of paid for it. I didn't do myself any favors at South Carolina. You know, some of the things that I was outspoken about, right? But even about the weekend money, about the play calling. You know, I know some guys who, you know, that's a whole other thing. You know, you see some of these college coaches recruit players just to shelve them on the bench. Yeah. You know,
to hoard talent.
Bobby Bowden used to talk about that. He would get the number one player knowing he wasn't going to play him, but he just didn't want Steve Spurrier to have him, right? So I knew a lot of guys whose careers and lives were ended just because another man decided to be petty, right? So you really, you know, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, and I'm happy the playing field has even out to where the power isn't only on the coaches or the team. Now the players have a lot of power, but now they don't like the players for expressing their power.
Yeah, you see how quickly the tone changed, right? Nick Saban got up out of there, right? Some of these coaches, they can't deal with players having a little bit of power and a little bit of leverage. That leverage goes a long way. I know what it feels like to not have any leverage, right?
Yeah, so, me too.
And so now I will hope, what I do fear is that we're going to, it's going to be too much of a tipping of the scale. And now the players are
well, it has to do that.
Like some of these guys are transferring 2 or 3 schools before the summer ends, right? And so there's got to be some kind of way where we get back to a space of balance. But I do like the direction we're going, man, and some of these guys deserve it. Yeah,
but that's how a pendulum swings, right?
Yeah.
If it swings in one direction, it's going to swing almost to the same direction in the same degree. And we have to, when something's implemented, it's going to take just as long for it to come back to where it's supposed to be. Absolutely. But everything's all fun until the rabbit has the gun, right?
There you go. Right? There you go. You know what time it is. So, hey, we'll see how it shakes out. But right now, a lot of people are pretty uncomfortable with what's going on, and I love it. I love a little bit of discomfort, right? You got to agitate things. Like Dick Gregory would say, hey, man, I consider myself an agitator. In the washing machine, that thing in the middle to switch the clothes around, that's the agitator. Mm-hmm. If you take the agitator out, you ain't got nothing but a heap of wet, dirty clothes, right? So the agitator's got to be there for something, and I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah. The honesty, keeping people honest is just about questioning them. And if they are agitated by the fact that you're questioning them, then they're hiding something.
There you go.
Right?
Transparency is key.
Yeah, because they say even the Bible, they say you could question God or or Jesus or whatnot, not in doubt, but in just wanting to understand.
Yeah, wonderment.
Right?
Yep.
So
I like that, man. I like that.
But listen, man, this was a great conversation. Any last words that you want to leave the people with?
Oh man, I just want to say I appreciate you, Lance. This is much needed. My saying, health is wealth and not much else. All right, a lot of people got a lot of plans for their life, a lot of things they want to do, places they want to go, but you see how important that is when you get sick, right? Mm-hmm. When somebody gets sick, when something happens on a grand scale, and I do want to shout out my stepmother, Kim Saunders, who we lost last year to cancer. She was the president of the National Bankers Association, former president of my bank, Mechanics and Farmers. So she's a highly intelligent financial mind, and within 6 months, she got cancer and she was gone. And that my dad, I know he's still dealing with it. We're still dealing with it as a family. But you see, she was raising a $500 million venture fund with a partner of hers from Citibank in Washington, D.C., and all of that comes to a halt, right? Because she's gone. Yeah. And so, you think about all these plans you have, where you see yourself, but if you're not taking care of ourselves now, if we're not ridding ourselves of stress hormones and all the mucus and all the things that are making us sick, then it's not going to matter in the long run. You know Absolutely. What I'm saying?
Yeah. Everything comes to a halt when you're not there to operate.
Yeah, right? Yeah, we got to operate at a high level, man. That's what it's about, man. So that's what we're here for. That's what these conversations are for. Shout out to you, Lance, man, for making a lot of this known, especially in this community, especially in South Florida, especially being men of color, right? A lot of these wellness talks and higher level consciousness gets hoarded by people who don't look like us. I've been in a lot of rooms where I've been the only black guy there, right? I'm sure you can relate. Yeah. And so, we got something to say, right? Yeah. It's not anything against anybody else, but we have a viewpoint that may be unique to ourselves that other people may not be able to relate to, but a certain demographic will be, So this is very important. So kudos to you, my brother.
Thank you. I'm just trying to give exposure to everyone. It doesn't matter. I don't care what you could be an alien. I'm trying to give you exposure. Right?
There you go. I can only speak from this avatar that was given to me. I can only speak from it, exactly. And and my experiences as such. So
Yeah. So let me let's plug yourself again, where they can find you, .com, everything.
Okay. For my website, Weslye.com, WESLYE.com. Check me out for all future events, retreats, services, all that good stuff. Instagram, Wes_Saunders88 on Instagram and on Twitter, and just Weslye Saunders on YouTube and TikTok. Yeah. So y'all follow your boy, man. We just getting this train started. So welcome aboard.
Thank you. And with that said, thank you for being with the Kaptainplantit Podcast.